Well, hello, and welcome. Listen, you have tuned in to the Pain and Glory. Listen to Pain and Glory Incorporated, and listen, we're going to be talking about teen dating violence awareness. You know, February, if you didn't already know, February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. Did you know that? If you didn't, now is the time to get informed, educated. Listen, I am excited. And just in case, don't want to assume, just in case this is your very first time being with us, I am Chelsealia Cookie Payne. I am the founder of Pain and Glory Incorporated, and I am elated to be your host on today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I invite you to go ahead and hit that share button. Tell someone about this happening. It is not just for people who have teenagers. It is not just for teens. Tell your teen to tune in. Yes, we want middle schoolers, we want high schoolers, we want college students, but also we want parents, we want grandparents, we want community leaders, we want pastors, we want employers, we want sisters and brothers, we want cousins, we want family members. If you have listen, no one, it literally is exempt from what we're going to be expressing on today. The information you're going to be finding out today and learning on today, listen, it is for all generations, all economic backgrounds, all ethnic backgrounds. It is for you. It is for me. It is for the person that comes to mind. The person you're thinking of right now that you're wondering if you should share this with is for that person. Mm-hmm. It's for everyone on your timeline. It's for everyone who is in your circle of influence. That's who it's for. So if you ever had a question about who should be coming and being a part of this particular live, I think I cleared it up for you. Everybody, because this topic there's not a person that it doesn't affect, right? And so I am elated to be able to offer this type of conversation. If you're new to Pain and Glory, this is one of the platforms that we stand upon as far as bringing awareness, information, and support in the area of domestic violence awareness and prevention. We have been around since 2005, and this specific initiative that deals with teen dating violence awareness and prevention started in 2009. So we've been around doing this for a moment, and I'm seeing you guys jump on. Hello. I'm looking at both groups. I can't see YouTube right now, but I see both groups. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, be sure to share and tell someone that this is happening because it's important, it's vital. Now more than ever, if you've seen any of the promos, you've seen even the one that was just up on the screen, now more than ever, we need this information. We need to know how to support one another, not just our teens, not just our young adults. Listen, we need to know what to do, what are we looking at, what is going on, and don't think. I want to put out this maybe disclaimer. Hello, Lynn. Hello, Julia. I want to kind of put out this disclaimer, or this, or do away with the type of thinking that, you know, my son or daughter is just in middle school. They're not dating. We've been in a pandemic. They haven't met anybody. Have you heard of social media? It's a little thing out there called social media, and what you may not think is happening, trust me, you would probably be surprised. And I want you to be cognizant of the fact that there may be some things that you're not aware of. Dating when you were in middle school, were in high school, when you were in college, some things have changed. Some things have literally stayed the same. Some things have literally stayed the same. But with the addition to social media, listen, don't downplay what your loved one may be going through, no matter what their age is. Don't downplay it. So this is going to be educational. It's going to be informative. It's going to be engaging. And I'm so happy to have the guests that we have coming on today. So I'm not going to belabor the time. I'm giving you guys actually time to tell others. I'm giving you time to share with others. I'm giving you time to tag your friend, your loved one, your sister, your cousin, your brother, your uncle, your father, your mother. I'm giving you time to share because listen, this is good stuff. This is like when you have a really good meal and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to tell someone about this. You want to share it. It is if you're a sharer. Are you a sharer? I need you to be sharing. So hit that share button and tell others about it. So I am elated because I have been, since the inception of PAYNE Glory, as I told you in 2005, I can't remember the exact year if I'm being honest, but partnership against domestic violence has been a very key component to the information that we share and the support that we give to other people by referring them to their site, by getting information. Partnership against domestic violence has been a huge, huge, huge part of what we do here. Thank you so much, Lynn. I appreciate you. And so I was in planning for this, I sent a request and I was like, listen, we would love to have one of your great speakers to come and address our platform, come on our platform and address our audience rather. And listen, they sent us an amazing and a dynamic and a jewel of a person in the person of Caroline Caulfield. So let me just give you a tidbit about my little Caroline. I call her my little because I'm just a little older than her. I'm just a smidge, Caroline is the dating violence prevention advocate for Partnership Against Domestic Violence, which is PADV. In this role, she coordinates the dating violence prevention program by educating teenagers, college students, and adults about healthy relationships. Pause and think about that for a minute, right? If I'm being honest, that's what's key. I don't care what stage of life you're in, how old you are, being educated on healthy relationships, we could stop right there and just being educated on healthy relationships and dating violence. So that's where her specialty lies. She has been working with survivors and their children for over 3 years in the metro Atlanta area. Before this role, though, Caroline was PADV's child advocate. She worked directly with child survivors of domestic violence in PADV's Gwinnett shelter. She provided services like case management, child and parent support groups, and community advocacy. Caroline has obtained her bachelor's in health and human services with a concentration of social engagement and advocacy from Kennesaw State University. Ladies and gentlemen, I am elated to present to you Caroline Caulfield. Thank you, Caroline.
What an introduction. My goodness. Thank you so much. It is an honor to be able to speak here today and be a part of this conversation. I'm so excited to be able to spread the good word about, teen dating violence. We're educating our community on it. We're talking about healthy relationships. Like she was saying, I just want to say, feel free to put questions in the chat. I want this to be a really safe space for everyone to feel like they can ask those hard questions. It's really difficult sometimes to talk to your teens about these issues, or if you're a teen struggling through this, it can be really challenging. So it's important that we have a community to rely on. So I'm going to just say, take care of yourself during this presentation, but feel free to ask any questions.
Absolutely, I totally agree, and I'm going to have that up on the screen as we're going to that. As Caroline is presenting today, excuse me, as she's presenting today, sometimes thoughts and questions will come to mind, right? And as they do, type them in. I want you to leave away from here. We want you to leave away from here with information and feeling as though, and knowing with a surety that you have gotten the resources that you came for, right? So we encourage you, type in your questions. This is a safe space, as Caroline said. And listen, I am going to get out of the way, Caroline, so that you can take over and get us where we need to be in this presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I yield the floor to Caroline Caulfield. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you. Yes, I am so looking forward to presenting today. Like we said, today's topic is teen dating violence. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. So I want to introduce PADV a little bit. So we began in 1977, and we were the very first domestic violence agency to open up in Georgia, and the fifth in the nation. So we've been around for a little bit, working in both Fulton and Gwinnett County. Our mission is to end the crime of intimate partner violence and empower its survivors. And our vision is a world free of intimate partner violence. So a little bit about us. Some of the services that we offer is we have a 24-hour Metro Atlanta crisis line. So if you ever know anyone that is in a situation where they may be experiencing domestic violence, even if they're in the fear of, is this relationship unhealthy? We have advocates who are always ready by the phone to answer any questions that you may have and help with safety planning, getting connected to resources, or helping finding shelter or supportive housing, financial assistance, things like that. We have emergency shelters both in Fulton and Gwinnett County. We offer community support groups. We have legal advocacy for both Fulton and Gwinnett, supportive housing programs. We assist with SNAP assistance. And then, of course, we have our dating violence prevention program, which is what I get to do. I get to educate the community about teen dating violence, what to look out for, what is the difference between unhealthy and healthy, and being able to help someone go through this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and define what teen dating violence is. So it is a pattern of controlling and abusive behaviors that someone uses over their intimate partner. It's important that we mention that this is something that happens over time. At the beginning of relationships, it may not always seem unhealthy. A lot of times relationships can go a while before patterns of unhealthy start happening. And once we get to an unhealthy, then it can lead into abusive behaviors, right? So it's important that we're recognizing that this happens over a period of time, and that it's also against an intimate partner. So recognizing that this can happen to men, women, anyone in the LGBTQ community. Like we were saying before, this is an issue for everyone, and it affects everyone. So it's making sure that we are including everyone in the conversation and realizing that it happens more often than we think. And going into that, I have some statistics to kind of back this up. So nearly 20% of female high school students and 13% of male high school students report being physically or sexually abused by a dating partner. So this is showing that it's about 1 in 5 women and about 1 in 7 men in high school are reporting physical or sexually abused. And that's just what's being reported too, because we know that it's not always easy to report abuse. So that statistic is really chilling, in my opinion, because it is showing that it is really happening. We have 26% of teens in relationships were victims of cyber dating abuse. Females were twice as likely to be victims as males. So we're going to be talking about digital abuse and what that looks like. 8 out of 10 girls who have been physically abused in dating relationships continue to date their abuser. There's a lot of reasons why someone may continue to stay in an unhealthy relationship, and we're going to get into that a little bit later on. We also have 1 in 5 teens who have been in a relationship said that a boyfriend threatened violence or self-harm if presented with a breakup. We know that at the very end of a relationship is the most dangerous time. So we're going to go through a little bit about safety planning and how to help someone that is attempting to leave an unhealthy relationship. A little bit about Georgia. Georgia is the 3rd highest percentage of teens experiencing physical abuse in a dating partner. So this is us, right? This is our community who is experiencing this. So it's so important that we're having this conversation. I also want to mention that in Georgia, in cases of IPV, which is intimate partner violence resulting in homicide, almost 50% of female victims began their relationship with the abuser that later killed them when they were in between the ages of 13 to 24. Additionally, girls aged 15 to 19 that are murdered each year, 30% are killed by their husband or their boyfriend. So what this is saying is that in these formative times when young people are starting their first relationships and making these connections, it's statistically proven that that person that we're seeing that later on in life that they've been murdered by their partner that they have met during these age times. So it's really important that we're having this conversation with young people. It's important that we're talking about what healthy relationships look like, how to prevent teen dating violence so that the statistic gets lower. So we're going to jump in and talking about what exactly is abusive behavior, what does it look like? So we have is first is sexual abuse. That's sexual activity without willing, active, and unimpaired consent. We're going to talk about consent a little bit later on. Next is emotional verbal abuse. So those are non-physical damaging behaviors, but that's things like manipulation and gaslighting and using peer pressure. So we're going to go into all of those things later on as well. Stalking, being repeatedly watched, followed, monitored. This can also happen on a digital platform. Next we have is physical abuse. That's any intentional use of physical touch to cause fear, injury, or assert control. And it's also important to mention that in these situations, even the threat of violence is considered physical violence. Next, we have is financial abuse. So that's exerting power and control through your finances. That's when your partner decides what you spend your money on, how often you work, what you do with your money, controlling you through your finances. And next we have is digital abuse. That's using technology to bully, stalk, threaten, or intimidate. And I believe we're going to go into a little bit about what digital abuse looks like a little later on. So like we mentioned before, dating violence is about a pattern of controlling and abusive behaviors, right? So what we have here is the teen power and control wheel. And these are different tactics that a person may use to maintain that power and control in a relationship. So we're going to dive into each and every one of these. So first we have is peer pressure. So that's manipulating you by threatening to tell other people your secrets, telling lies about you, your mutual friends to humiliate you, or even saying things like you're going to lose all your friends if you stop dating. A lot of times when we're in relationships, there is a lot of external reasons why, our friends, our family, our communities, why they may feel like you have to stay in the relationship. And then the abusive partner can say things like, well, you're going to lose all your friends if we break up, or if no one's going to like you anymore, if we're no longer in a relationship. So they're using the power of others in order to make you feel like you should stay in the relationship. So next is isolation or exclusion. So I have this discussion question on here. I'd love for you guys to type in your chat, but how often should people who are dating one another see each other? Some people say every day. Some people say, once or maybe twice a week. Some people even say, whenever works. And I think the bottom line here is that we make sure that we are spending a lot of time together, but we're also spending a lot of times on all those other things in life that are grand, like our friends, our family, our hobbies, and that alone time, and making sure we're focusing on our academics or work. It's important that we have time for all of these different aspects, because going into what an abusive partner does when it comes to isolation or exclusion is that they control who that person interacts with. So they'll say things like, I just don't like the way that your friends talk about us. They always leave me out of the conversation. Let's stop talking to them. So you stop talking to your friends. And then, they'll say things like, your mom just doesn't understand our relationship. Just come over to my house. We don't need to be around your family anymore. So then you stop communicating with your family. And one by one, that support system that you had is getting less and less, and you're having to solely rely on that abusive partner. So it makes it a lot harder to leave in the end, because all you have for your emotional support is that abuser. So some other qualities that we want to recognize is maybe they refuse to trust you by acting jealous or possessive, blaming things on like, I only do this because I love you. Love is not an excuse for abuse. We want to remember too that maybe they try to get you not trust your friends or family. Maybe they monitor where you go, always demanding to know what your location is. So next we have is using social status. So this is when the partner treats you less than, or like a servant or like a child. Maybe they're expecting, making all the decisions in the relationship. They're choosing what you do, where you guys go out to eat all the time, but there's not a balance, right? Because it's good when there's surprises and things, but it's important that each partner is making decisions in the relationship. There's a shared power, right? But when they use social status, it's when they expect you to stick to gender norms. Maybe they punish you by withholding affection. So that's giving the silent treatment instead of talking about the issue. And maybe they're pressuring you to dress or present yourself in a certain way that they want you to. So next is intimidation. So that's raising a fist when angry, but not swinging. That's throwing objects, punching walls, kicking doors, hurting or threatening to hurt your friends, families, or even pets. And then making you feel afraid by using certain looks or gestures. This is just another way to control your behavior or what you do by the threatening of something could happen if you were to not do what they say. So next is minimizing, denying, or blaming. So let's think in a scenario of, I realize some of these issues are going on and I need to talk to my partner about it. It's time to discuss. What they may do is they may minimize your argument by making it seem less important than it is. Maybe they deny, deflect responsibility, so it's not on the abuser. And then they blame, turn your argument on you so that you are the instigator. So this can happen, when they're just not ready to have these conversations, when they're not owning up to their faults or their failures, or recognizing when they may have hurt your feelings. Maybe you feel like you're frequently making excuses for your partner's behavior, and then you find yourself withholding information because you know that your partner's going to get upset, or you know that they're not going to agree with you. So it's just better not to tell. And then there's also, maybe you felt like you used to be a very different person. Maybe you were more open and relaxed, but now maybe you feel a little bit more reserved and quiet and not feeling like you can share as much. So following through with this, we're going to talk a little bit about gaslighting. And I know this word gets used a lot, but it's kind of hard to understand what it really is. But it's when someone makes you feel as though your reality is untrue. So they're going to use different tactics in order to do this. So for example, they'll withhold. So the abusive partner pretends not to understand or refuses to listen, saying things like, I don't want to hear this again. You're just trying to confuse me. You're still hung up on this. I don't want to have this conversation. Next we have is countering. So that's when the abusive partner questions the victim's memories of events and remembers them, saying that they don't remember them right. Like, I never promised those things. You never remember things correctly. You're just making a big deal out of nothing. And then we have the blocking and diverting. So that's when they're refusing to answer your questions and changing the subject or questioning their thoughts. Just another one of your crazy ideas. You are just imagining things. We're changing the subject. And then there's trivializing. So that's when the abusive partner, questions the memory of the person, or maybe makes them seem like their argument just isn't that big of a deal. Like, I don't understand why you're not cool about this. All of our other friends are okay. Why is this such a big deal to you? Or, you're just going to get upset over a silly thing like that. You're just too sensitive. And then the last one is forgetting or denial. So that's when they've forgotten what has occurred or denies things, saying like, I never hit you, you're making that up, or I don't know what you're talking about. This is just one of your crazy thoughts again, where they just make you feel like what happened wasn't really true. So these are important things to look out for in any kind of relationship, understanding these gaslighting tactics. So that way, if, someone is trying to manipulate you by using these tactics. All right, so now we get to talk a little bit about what consent is. So consent at the bare, what it is permission for something to happen and an agreement to do something. So if you think about it, consent is given all the time in daily life. We consent when, we are babysitting for our parents, or when we are, agreeing to go out for the night with our friends. We're giving our consent. So this can be applied in any relationship, but I think it's very important that we talk about it in a sexual setting. So I really love this acronym. Consent is FRIES. So it is freely given. This is not under the influence of drugs or alcohol. It is not in the sense of saying that you owe someone is pressuring you in order to feel like you need to do these sexual acts. It is given on your own free will. Next, consent is reversible. So at any time, even if these partners are very used to each other, they've been dating a long time, just because you're in a relationship does not automatically mean that there is consent. Consent needs to be asked for every single time. So knowing too that even if you guys have gone through certain acts, it can be taken away. So at any point someone starts feeling uncomfortable, consent is reversible. It's also informed. We're making sure that we're telling our partner about our birth control, about whether or not we're using condoms, and about any STIs, our health, and also making sure we're letting them know about, what we are expecting in the bedroom and what we want to stay away from, making sure that we're informing our partners. It's also important to mention that if a condom is agreed upon at the beginning and then is taken off without the other person's knowledge, that is no longer consent. So we're making sure that it is informed. We're telling our partners about our sexual health. Next, consent is enthusiastic. So we're looking for active engagement, not passive engagement. Someone that is excited, that they are happy to be there, they are willingly, actively participating. We're paying attention to those body cues. What we don't want is someone who feels very nervous, very closed off. Maybe they're not actively engaging. Maybe they're just passively engaging. So it's important to remember that consent is enthusiastic. And lastly, we have is specific. So just because a yes was given for one sexual act does not mean that it was granted for other sexual acts. So it's really important that you're checking along the way, making sure that your partner is feeling comfortable and that we're not crossing any boundaries. I know that this can sometimes be scary, but I want everyone to just know that it's really important that you're putting your own sexual health and your body autonomy first. So being able to speak up when you're not feeling comfortable is incredibly important. And it's more important than hurting someone's feelings. So making sure that you're prioritizing your health and safety first. And as long as you're communicating with your partner along the way, I believe that you guys are going to be in a good, healthy situation. So of course, if anyone has any other questions about consent, put it in the chat. All right, so now we're going to talk about digital abuse and how technology is used. So it's pretty common nowadays for teens to share their location. Either they're doing it through Find My Friends, through Snapchat, through just tagging where you were on social media. I want to advise that you guys do this in a very safe way and that you are putting, this in a situation where you're feeling healthy about it. So I see a question that, what is the best way to talk to a person when they are afraid? Well, absolutely. When they're afraid, that's a really big emotion. And I think that it's important that you wait to talk to that person when they're at a little bit of a healthier level. So let's say if they're really, really anxious and scared, they're not going to listen to anything you have to say, right? Because they're in like a survival mode. So it's important to put this, make a safe environment, calm them down, help them, regulate their emotions and, come to a space. And then later on, we're going to talk about how to help a friend and some tactics on that. So I'm going to revisit it. But going forward on, just sharing your information, knowing about geofencing, that's when someone monitors where you're going, they're tracking every move you make. And if you go somewhere that you might not have originally said, then it must mean that you're cheating. So they're going to use this as a way to control you further. It's also important to mention sexting, that is sending explicit videos or pictures. This can happen in settings where, maybe a person felt forced to send these videos or they felt pressured into doing so. So just making sure that if you're under the age of 18, that this is absolutely not something you should be doing, because as soon as you send out those pictures and videos, it is no longer in your control and you don't have any say in what happens to those pictures. So I advise caution. Next is demanding passwords. So it's important to recognize that we're allowed to have our privacy on the internet, right? Our partners shouldn't know all of our passwords. There should be some boundaries on what apps they are allowed to look at. So making sure that, this is something that they can do. Maybe they're going to check your phone, check your calls, see who you've been monitoring. I think it's very healthy that you set some boundaries on your phones and on your devices, saying things like, it's cool if we follow each other on social media, but you can't have my password. And you're also allowed to follow whoever you like on social media unless it's talked about where it's been an issue. I also think putting it on your phone, so it's okay if you look at my photos, but it's not okay if you look at my text messages. Those are private. So making sure you're having healthy boundaries on what it is and what is not okay to look at on your phone. Also knowing stalking on social media is a big issue, and writing intimidating messages. I've seen a situation where a abusive partner created multiple fake accounts on social media to bully their partner. A partner was so distressed, they went to the abusive partner for comfort, even though that was the person that was causing the abuse in the first place. And it was just a further way to use technology in order to control how that person was feeling and controlling, that person's dependence on the abusive partner. So just being very careful about what you post on social media and having certain boundaries on that. It's also important to mention that over calling, over texting can be really unhealthy in the sense of, I tell my partner, hey, I'm going to, do some homework. I'm going to hang out with my sisters and then I'm going to go to bed. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And they're constantly texting you. Why aren't you responding? Where have you been? Answer my calls. And then you're worrying about them. Did I hurt their feelings? When it's important to know that, you can't always be on your phone and you can't always answer immediately. So making sure that, you guys are respecting each other's privacy and that, we're not over communicating, over calling on the phone. So if you guys have any questions on digital abuse, I'm happy to answer. So next we've got is warning signs of an abusive partner. So this person may get angry very quickly. They may be extremely possessive or maybe jealous or insecure. Maybe this person is really charming. Maybe they are, popular. They get along with everyone. Maybe in certain social groups, they act like one person, but behind closed doors, they act like a completely different person. This person also may demand things to get very serious early on in a relationship. And they may have also experienced abuse in their family. So knowing that the cycle of abuse is true, that it is more likely that someone has experienced abuse, is more likely to experience it later on. So recognizing that that is a barrier or a reason that someone has learned unhealthy behaviors. So now we got red flags of someone who's experiencing abuse. This is someone that we're looking for, that we may realize, maybe they're in an unhealthy situation. So maybe they're experiencing mood swings or changes in personality, changes in eating or sleeping habits. They're constantly thinking or worrying about their dating partner, and difficulty making decisions or relying on others to make decisions. I think that's a really big one because in a lot of relationships, the abuser is the one who controls what the other person does. They make all the decisions. So even outside of that relationship, that person may have a really hard time making even little decisions, being fearful of what to do. Also important to mention, maybe they're avoiding their friends, sudden changes in appearance, of course, unexplained injuries, and changes in school performance or activities. I think it's important to recognize that one of these qualities is very normal in a teen, and they might go through these kind of changes. But if you're recognizing that a couple of these things are on the list and that you recognize that they're happening, it may be a good time to check in on that friend. So now it's important, we're going to talk a little bit about the barriers to breaking up. Like we said before, the risk of violence is at its highest at the end of relationship and after. And there's a lot of reasons why someone who may even realize that they are in an unhealthy relationship decide not to leave. For example, they love that person. They've been in that relationship for a really long time. They remember how good things used to be, and they feel like they can change the relationship and they feel like they can make it better. There's also on the other end of fear. What would happen if I leave this partner? Would they hurt me? Would they hurt my friends or family? Would they ruin my reputation? It can be really scary leaving a relationship. There's also uncertainty of life without that partner, especially as a teen in these first relationships, they may fantasize what life could look like with that person. And it can be really challenging to know, what would life look like outside of this relationship. There's the effects of breakup on friends, family, and community. Whether we know it or not, our support systems may be putting pressure on us to stay in the relationship. Maybe the parents really like us together. Our friends say things like, well, you guys are just so good together. I think you guys are the best couple. And you may feel like you're disappointing those people if you do decide to end the relationship. And then, of course, there's dating and breakup and experience. A lot of times teens, this is their first relationship. And it's hard to recognize, when is the time that I continue working on the relationship and when is the time for us to go our separate ways. That can be challenging to recognize. Next, there's legal policy barriers. So if, for example, a teen doesn't have as much control over their day-to-day life as an adult does, right? They have their school, they have their responsibilities, and also getting a TPO looks really different than a temporary protective order. Looks different for a teen than it is an adult. So thinking about how a teen goes through, they need adult support when they go get a TPO. So it doesn't have to be from a parent, but it does have to be from an adult. So it looks a little different. And there's also LGBTQ factors to recognize. A lot of times people think, because it's a woman and a woman or a man and a man, or if they're a queer relationship, then it's not going to be abusive. But we know because of statistics that LGBTQ youth experience dating violence twice as likely as heterosexual youth. So it's so important that we're putting them in this conversation and letting them know about, there's help, right? So then we've got, there's also barriers of like that person may be in the closet, maybe they're fearful of coming out, and an abusive partner will hold that over their head, deciding, And then lastly, we have the isolation factor, right? So that's when someone may be using, they're stop talking to their friends, they've stopped talking to their parents, and they're only relying on that person. So if that's your only support system, it's going to be a lot harder to leave that relationship. So next question I'm going to go into. So this question goes into perfectly of how to talk to a friend. So if a teen trusts you not to say something, how do you help that person without hurting them? Yeah, that's really challenging. I think important to recognize, if you tell someone that this is going to be confidential, that, they can trust you, as long as it's not in threat of violence. So if someone is experiencing violence or self-harm, if there's danger for children, then it has to be reported, because that is a danger. And as anyone, these are things that are really, really important. But recognizing too that you can help someone just navigate this, because as a teen, it's important that they're making these decisions on their own, right? So this is how we're going to talk. We're going to talk to how to talk to a friend. A lot of things that I want to recommend that this conversation always happens in person, because a lot gets thrown away through text, and it's hard to have like a meaningful, important conversation like this. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to ask a lot of yes or no questions or feel like you have to know all the answers. You don't want to be judgmental or make them feel stupid or ashamed. And I think the big one is you don't want to force them to make a lot of decisions, because ultimately, right, like this is the person's life and it's their choice whether or not they stay or leave a relationship. And that can be hard, right? Because, sometimes you see someone going through it and you're like, what are you doing? Get out of this relationship. They're bad for you. But like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of reasons why someone may not be ready to leave a relationship and they might need some more time. So, of course, helping them through this as they go on this journey, and then, so don't force them to end the relationship. That needs to be on their own timeline. So support them through this process and do not underestimate the abuse if they decide to stay. What you do want to do is let them know that you are concerned. Mention other people that they may want to talk to. Of course, it's really important that teens have support systems and adults. So encourage them to talk to other trusted adults, maybe friends, parents, counselors, teachers, any adult that they can rely on. Let them know that you're available to talk if they need to, and listen to what they have to say, right? I think a lot of reasons teens struggle with coming to adults is because they're afraid of their reactions, they're afraid of them getting involved, maybe they're afraid of being lectured, right? So one of the best things that we can do for teens is just meet them where they're at and listen to what they have to say, right? Like, if you're going through this, it can be really challenging. So being able to give them that space to talk about it, to let them feel their feelings, and support them along the way, letting them know about resources or, creating a safety plan. I think, like we know what to do in a fire, it's important to know what to do if you are in an abusive relationship or if it's time to leave. So we recommend creating a safety plan. So this can be a list of phone numbers. I think we're going to go into it in another slide, so I'm going to wait. But if there's any other questions on safety planning, hopefully I can answer them at the end. Which is right here. Awesome. All right. So it's knowing safety planning is a survivor's unique strategy for harm reduction as they prepare to get out of a relationship. So there's a lot of different tactics that you can use. For example, if we know that that person's about to break up, you can say, hey, from these hours, I'm going to be breaking up with this partner. I am going to send you this code word when it's over. And if you don't hear from me, then it's probably a good idea if you drive by the house. And if the lights are off, then I need you to call 911. Having these kind of safety plans enables the survivor to have that confidence to, get out of the relationship, to feel safer, knowing that there's a plan of action. Because, when we're in a crisis situation, sometimes all reasonable thought, just goes out of our head and we forget because it could be a dangerous situation. It could be a moment of crisis. So having a plan in place, even written down or on the phone, can be an incredible tool for a survivor. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about bystander intervention. So this is when we see something happening in public. Do we get involved or do we not get involved? Right? Because a lot of times people don't get involved because they're like, well, it's not my business. Did I hear what I thought I heard? Maybe if you're in a group of friends and someone just, humiliates the partner in front of them, you're like, do I say something? Do I not say something? And people do get involved because they care about that person, right? They want to make sure that they're standing up for their friends, that they're protecting someone that may be in an unhealthy situation. So bystander intervention is when a person who witnesses teen dating violence safely takes action to help the teen that's being abused. So it's important that we're putting our own safety first. But there's a lot of ways that you can get involved. For example, you can anonymously report, let a teacher or counselor or even adult know about what's going on. Talking with a friend away from the abuser, so using those strategies that we talked about earlier, offering support and resources, and then I think that might be the last one. But yeah, so letting them know about what you can do next, creating a safety plan, encouraging to help them there. All right, so next up we have is tips on ending a relationship. So these are some, guides that I like. Of course, getting out of a relationship is unique to anyone, but here's some general advice. So discuss with a friend's feelings and hesitation ending the relationship. Get support through sorting out your doubts. I think that's a really helpful tool that you can use maybe for someone that's not ready to leave a relationship or maybe is fearful about what to do next. Let's talk it out, right? Like figure out what's the feelings. And then that way that person can feel very solidified in their knowledge of, yes, I am going to leave the relationship. Because a lot of times at the end of relationship, the partner is going to do everything in their power in order to make that person stay. So it's important that the survivor feels a resolution and knowing that this is the right time to leave the relationship. So consider various options, a time and place to break up, whatever works for your safety plan. Informed a trusted friend of yours, so that you can have support, kind of like that situation I said, the code word or driving by to make sure you're okay. Someone should know what you're doing so that they can check in on you in case of anything happening. It's really important that we're using clear and specific language, right? So I want to end the relationship, not I think we should see other people, or maybe we need to take a break. It's very important that we're using very clear language. State your boundaries clearly, specifically, and adamantly, and being careful when giving explanations, because like we said, this is the time when they're going to say, they're going to manipulate you. They're going to try and convince you to stay. So be very careful when you're saying why you're leaving. Give them as little room as possible to manipulate you or gaslight you further. All right, so next, we talked a lot about what it's like to be in an unhealthy relationship. And I think it's so important that we talk about what a healthy relationship looks like, right? So this is the 5 pillars of what we define is a healthy relationship. So first we have is effective communication, right? Strong, open conversations about what you both need, want, and desire for a positive, affirming relationship, right? So we're able to talk about the hard stuff. We're able to, float through, having a safe space where each person can feel like they can confide and not get making fun of or not being believed. Open conversation means that we're able to talk to each other about anything. Next we have is express boundaries. So that's the ability to talk open and honestly about what you're comfortable and uncomfortable with without feeling pressured to answer a certain way, right? Because our boundaries are very important. There's a couple of different kinds of boundaries I want to get into a little bit. For example, what is physical bound? Like we have physical boundaries. So that's when we tell our partners, what are we okay with physically? Are we comfortable holding hands in public? Are we comfortable with PDA? Being able to say things like, I'm cool if we do this, at school, but not in front of my parents. That's weird. It's important to be able to set those kind of physical boundaries. Next, there's emotional boundaries. Has there been a situation where you've had a really, really long day and you're drained and you're tired, and then your best friend hits you up and she's like, I've had the worst day ever. Let me tell you all about it. And you want to give that person their time and space they deserve, but your cup is empty and it's hard. So when you set emotional boundaries, it's when you tell yourself, what you are comfortable talking about and what you're uncomfortable. So in this situation, I'd probably say, hey, I'm so sorry you had a bad day, but I really need to take care of myself tonight. Do you mind if we have this conversation tomorrow or over the weekend? It's important to put yourself first in those kind of emotional settings so you don't burn yourself out. Next we have is digital boundaries. So that's what we said about before, deciding what apps are comfortable looking at, what apps are private, making sure that our settings on social media are to our liking, that we are setting those boundaries with our partners, because it's important to know that, your partner doesn't need all of your passwords or your settings. Being able to set healthy boundaries on that is a big portion of respect. All right, so moving on into that shared power, right? So that's equal commitment, interacting with one another that affirms all individuals. So that's when we're sharing in the decision-making process, right? We're both deciding, what happens in the relationship. It's not, one person's overpowering and the other person is, maybe, not as into it. So it's important that, the commitment to the relationship is equal and that we are sharing in the decision-making process. So next we have is respect. So that's acknowledging differences and honoring them in a constructive way. So it's totally okay that you may not agree with your partner all the time, that you don't have the same interest. Everyone deserves to have those, differences. And respect is when we honor those, knowing it's okay to not agree and it's okay, to give that person space to do what they need to do or to have those feelings. I think also respect is also knowing that we're allowed to have our own individual family, friends, hobbies. We don't need to be always doing what the other person's doing, but we're able to have, two different interests and respecting the other person's time, to be able to do those things and invest in their friends, things like that. So lastly, we have is self-esteem. So that's growing together as individuals who support one another unconditionally. I really like the term interdependent, which is when there's two individuals who are in a relationship and we're growing together and learning, but we're also individuals with our own dreams, hopes, goals, and desires. And it's okay to have that, like, other support systems, so we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket, right? We're encouraging one another to be the best version of ourselves and taking care of each other. All right, so if this was something that you found interesting, and if you have a teen in your life who may be passionate about this subject, I really would love to highlight our Teen Against Dating Violence Advisory Board. It's a group of teens all across Georgia. We meet bi-weekly. And we meet through Zoom, and it's conversations on what dating violence is. How can we spread awareness in our community? They are our young advocates, and they are absolutely incredible. So they do a lot of our social media content. They bring in a really wonderful youth-specific perspective. So we're always able to know what teens are going through, what are their issues, and we're also teaching them about leadership skills, public speaking skills, and advocacy. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can check it out on PADV's website. I also want to mention we're having a teen summit, which is so exciting. We get to do this in person. It is going to be April 23rd at Decatur High School. And this is going to be, the theme is Authentically Me, Courageous Enough to Be Myself. And it's going to be a day-long workshops, and it's going to have a lot of different speakers. We're going to talk about what does it mean to be authentically me. We're going to talk about teen dating violence, healthy relationships. So for the age group for the advisory board, it is high school age students. So they need to be in high school. And then for Teen Summit, this is actually an event for teens and adults. So I believe we'd prefer the kids to be 12 and up, and then parents can come. It's going to be a really cool event. So if you're interested, you can find more information online. And then I want to highlight some resources. So what we have here is the National Teen Dating Abuse Hotline. A lot of times when we hear about these hotlines, it's like, you should be in crisis, but that's not really the case. You're able to call these hotlines if you just have a question, if you're just like, is this abusive? Is this, am I going crazy? It's someone that can be on the other line that can offer immediate help. So don't be afraid to reach out to these kind of hotlines. They're really helpful resources. So next, I want to mention we have Breaking the Silence teen text line. So it's Georgia specific, and you're able to just text your questions, and an advocate will be able to get back to you. If you haven't heard about Love is Respect, go check it out, because it is an awesome website. It has every question you may have about dating violence or healthy relationships. I think it's great for all ages. So check that one out. Of course, then we have our PADV's website. We've got some helpful tools on there, and then follow us on social media. All right, so that is it from me. I would love to just take some time to answer any questions. I'd also just love to hear, what is your opinion of this presentation? Was there something new that you learned, something surprising,
Well, Caroline, I can tell you firsthand, without a doubt, hands down, this presentation was amazing.
Yay!
When I tell you, you were quite thorough. You gave some good information. So I'm leaving this slide up so that people can get the QR code
Yes.
and be able to just have this information. But I'm telling you, I'm loving the comments. The one that I just put up a moment ago said totally awesome, that the presentation was totally awesome. I love the fact of the responses that were given about even earlier someone mentioned about being happy that you included the LGBTQ community in this, because it is, when we're talking about teen dating violence awareness and prevention, we have to be clear that, it's not just one way. And the age groups, as you said a moment ago, when you were talking about the upcoming event, it's everything you said touches anyone really that is in a relationship.
Right.
And so I am so appreciative of you just coming in and this was such a huge blessing just having this information and the resources you shared. Loveisrespect.org is definitely a great one. When you gave I like what you said. You said something very key about this when you said about the National Teen Domestic Violence Hotline. It's not just if you're in trouble, but if you want to ask questions, maybe you simply don't know, what, or if you see it, because we all have a bestie or a good friend or a sister or brother or cousin, whatever, and you want to know, I noticed something, maybe this is, maybe this isn't, the hotline can help with that, and then the Partnership Against Domestic Violence. Listen, you guys, there are so many resources available. And if you could, Carolyn, if you could go back to where you talked about being authentically the summit that's coming up, so people can, if you guys need to screenshot that, if you need to, so that you can know that it's coming up on the 23rd of April.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on a Saturday. It's going to be
Yes.
a really awesome event for parents and teens. We're going to have really wonderful workshops, free food, DJ. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And this is the type of thing that I think people need to know. I agree. Someone said it's such a blessing. I agree. And that to know that these type of resources and these type of events, this type of information is available.
Right.
And, and to have someone like yourself, Caroline, that can break it down and put it in bite-sized chunks, that is not overwhelming. It's not like, oh my gosh, but it's like, oh, okay, this is good. So listen, guys, if you happen to miss anything, or if there's something you want to go back and see, the replay is going to be up. It's not coming down. The replay will be here. Caroline, if you have information on how to connect with you or the Partnership Against Domestic Violence, I can put that on the screen. So if you want to share that, feel free, and I'll use my fast fingers to type it away and put it on the screen.
You're good. Yeah, let me double check. I want to make sure. I don't know if I have it right on me, but if you look us up online, we're padv.org. You can meet us. We have a 24-hour crisis line, so at any time, you can give an advocate a call and get immediate resources, safety planning, things like that. Y'all can also request these kind of presentations. We talk about teen dating violence. We also talk about healthy relationships. So if anyone's interested in hearing these kind of things, you can request presentations. There's volunteer opportunities, especially if you're interested in volunteering for Teen Summit. We'll need help. So there's a lot of different opportunities to get involved.
Oh my gosh, Caroline, this has been amazing. So if you're watching now, or if you're watching the replay, listen, this has been great. And if you have questions that come to mind, I know if you're like me, you sit there with it and let it process, and then you're like, I have a question. The chat will still be available. And whatever questions you put in there, I'll send them right over to Caroline so we can get an answer to you. So don't feel like, I didn't ask a question, or I couldn't think of anything, or I thought about this later. Put it in the comment section. I'll make sure that we get the answer to you. How's that? So again, Caroline, thank you from the depths of our hearts. We here at PAYNE Glory, we appreciate you taking the time to give us such an amazing, amazing presentation. If you could take us to the last slide once again, so that people can see the QR code, or that one. Actually,
I think that's a good one.
Yeah. So there we go. Yeah. So that people can, if you want to screenshot it, if you want to take a picture of it, so that you can have this information. This is good information to share, to have, just have in your back pocket, so to speak, to have. So Caroline, thank you again.
This has been a lovely way to spend my Saturday. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. You nailed you. That's a good way. That I agree 100%. This has been such a wonderful way to spend the Saturday, and you have just made it even more sunshiny than it already is.
Thank you.
So don't go anywhere, Caroline. Don't go anywhere. So you guys, listen. Next month we have some great things coming up. Next month on the 12th of March, well, all of March is Women's History Month. So the 12th of March, listen, we're going to be having our Women's Health and Wellness Expo. Thank you, Ms. Patricia. Thank you. On the 12th of March, we're having a Health and Wellness Expo that you guys do not want to miss. We are going to have some amazing guests that are going to be coming on. It's going to be virtual. So listen, I don't care if wherever you are, you can join in. So we want you to be a part of it. That is going to be the 12th of March. And then right after that, we're going to be having our Pain in the Pews Mental Health and Ministry Monday night broadcast. We've got some special guests coming up and some surprises. Oh my gosh, we're looking forward to it. So stay close, stay tuned, and stay with us. Caroline, don't go anywhere. Listen, this has been another great Pain and Glory event. Listen, don't forget, think about it and take time to know what's a girl or what's a guy to do. This has been Domestic Violence Awareness 101, and I am Chelselia Cookie Payne. I was joined today by Caroline Caulfield, and listen, we are glad that you're here. We'll see you soon.